Hogwarts Legacy DLC is coming. We now got confirmation from Insider Gaming that supports earlier rumors of a definitive edition or director's cut that Bloomberg reported on. The DLC is set to have around 10 to 15 hours of additional content with a new story quest, side quest, activities and outfits. And the price should be somewhere between $20 to $30 if you would buy it separately, putting it in the price range of pretty substantial expansions like Ghost's Iki Island DLC or Cyberpunk 2077's Phantom Liberty. I think we already have some pretty good guesses as to what we're going to see in the new content, including a visit to Azkaban. Yeah, I know Hufflepuffs already went there during their house exclusive quest, but it would be a shame to design such an iconic location and show it to only a small part of your players. So with some of the assets already designed, including the Dementors, I think it makes sense for them to expand on it and send us there for another mission, maybe even a full-on dungeon. And depending on what ending you chose for Sebastian's questline, you might even get to see your old classmate here, although he's of course going to be behind bars, which would add a great sense of consequence to your actions, something that was definitely lacking in the base game. Going to Azkaban of course also means we'd likely learn the Patronus charm, which is an awesome spell to add to your arsenal. And I'm expecting more spells to be added for sure. The PC modding community already showed us some great candidates for potential spells, like it would be really cool if we got to use that fire tornado spell for ourselves. But having Confundo to keep an enemy stunned makes stealth a way more viable playstyle, so that could be a cool addition too. And there are more mods that I think showcase some potential new features, like the one that lets you use a dragon as a mount. Okay, granted, I don't know how much of a difference it would make versus flying a hippogriff, but it looks really cool, and the chance to add a dragon to my vivarium sounds awesome too, especially if it's the one we managed to save with Poppy. And speaking of your companions, there are a couple of characters that deserve some more love in the DLC, and at the top of that list is the Ravenclaw student Amit, who you first meet during astronomy class. There are actually reasons to believe that he was planned as a more fleshed out companion at some point during development, as there are many unused lines in the game file similar to your more prominent classmates. So hopefully we finally get to go on an adventure with him, which also solves the fact that Ravenclaw is currently the only house without a companion storyline. But Ravenclaw has another very interesting character in its ranks, and that's this fancy dressed dude who you can find practicing his broom skills in the courtyard sometimes. This is actually Hector Fawley, the future Minister of Magic, as you can see from the subtitles when he talks. Most other named students are featured in at least one quest, but Hector does not have a quest of his own yet, which is something I can totally see changing in the DLC. In fact, I think Hector might play an important role in that new story quest that was mentioned by Insider Gaming. I think the main story of Hogwarts Legacy wraps up pretty definitively, so that makes it difficult to decide where a new story mission would take us next. In fact, I can only really think of one, and that is the Ministry of Magic. Several of our teachers have ties to the Ministry, and even your character has a connection if you think back to how the story started. And while he is no minister yet, it would be awesome if Hector would also join us to set up that future storyline. Maybe you're called in to recount your events of what happened at Hogwarts and something goes wrong at the Ministry while you are there. The other reason why I think the Ministry is likely is because it makes for an excellent dungeon type mission. The Haunted Shop quest that started as a PlayStation exclusive mission was arguably the best mission in the entire game, and that took place in a fully separate area. So how cool would it be if they put the same quality of design with unique mechanics, enemies and environments into a place that we already know from other stories in this universe? I think that would be awesome, but of course, if you have any theories, share them in the comments below, and by the way, it would be awesome if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe for more content like this. Now, while it would be cool to visit some new places, I also think it's very likely the definitive edition will give us more things to do around Hogwarts. New activities could refer to new open world objectives, but maybe we'll get something like a more expansive dueling club or another activity to compete with other students. I also think it's likely we get to see some extra classes, hopefully to teach us some of those new spells I mentioned earlier. And depending on if the DLC wants to continue the story from the base game, we might even see a less eventful 6th year of school, focusing more on learning spells and brewing potions without goblins trying to blow up the school. And there are of course some secrets still hidden at Hogwarts too, the biggest of which definitely being the Chamber of Secrets. The entrance can actually be found in game, but the big problem is that you need to be able to speak Parseltongue to enter, which is not something our character can do. We do have a friend who can, however, and considering how important Ominous was in Sebastian's questline, he can definitely carry a story on his own. I do want to point out that while it sounds really cool, there are some problems with us visiting the Chamber of Secrets. The biggest of which is the fact that the only known openings of the chamber happened way later, in Voldemort and Harry's time at school respectively. But as long as the basilisk that lies hidden in the chamber does not leave, that does not have to be a problem. And speaking of the basilisk, remember how it turns you to stone when you look at it? Well, Ominous is blind, meaning he likely would be immune to the creature's petrification. In fact, with that and him speaking Parseltongue, it almost feels like he is made for this quest, right? As to what we'll be doing down there, remember that it's called the Chamber of Secrets, plural, so the basilisk is likely not the only thing that's hidden down there. Another part of Hogwarts that is kind of in the game already is the Great Lake. While we can swim, we aren't able to dive, but there are a lot of spells that could easily allow us to breathe underwater. That would mean that we get a whole new type of movement for the DLC, maybe even including underwater combat. But yeah, the main reason to dive into the lake is of course to meet all the magical creatures that live in the waters, which includes a colony of merpeople. We actually already have a quest in the game that references them, as student Nerida sets up an exchange of gifts which appears to be successful. So maybe we get to follow up on her research and actually visit the merpeople for ourselves. The base game did teach us a lot more about goblin culture, so Avalanche could continue that trend and teach us even more about the other creatures living in this universe. I'd also imagine that us being able to dive underwater means we get to add a ton of new creatures to our vivarium too. And while I don't think it will be part of the paid DLC, I think a New Game Plus mode is also in the cards. That's mostly due to this response from community manager Chandler Wood, who said the following in June of this year. We've seen all of your feedback and requests for New Game Plus. There are conversations happening on our side. I can't say any more now, but we hear you. So that sounds like it's a possibility, one you would definitely want to include with a big new content drop for your game. At the very least, it should give you a chance to experience all the seasons again, because I don't think the option to change those is going to be added. Chandler also commented on this topic in June, saying seasons are a very complex thing, tied in with a lot of quests and progression in the game. We're really excited we were able to get the functionality in for photo mode, which sounds like it was already quite the hassle to get it working for photo mode, let alone for the whole game. Now maybe they figured out a solution in the meantime, but as of right now, them adding this feature seems unlikely. And another much requested feature that I don't think we'll see added to the game is Quidditch. Yes, I know that has probably been the most requested feature since day one, but considering the time and effort that would go into making something like that, it would likely be most of the content of the DLC. And why do that when you already have a separate game as Warner that is literally just Quidditch? So to me, it makes much more sense that they add more of what makes Hogwarts Legacy special, the exploration, the world building, and just living in this magical world, rather than add a single new activity that would take a lot of work. Either way, with a rumored release date in 2025, I'd imagine we'll get an official reveal relatively soon, maybe at this year's Game Awards on December 12th. When we learn more, we will of course let you know here, so subscribe to not miss the next Hogwarts Legacy video, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and if you want, you can watch our previous video on the game's big summer update by clicking on the screen. I will see you in the next one, goodbye.